皆様、こんにちは。
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much for joining us at International CANAL Forum Nagoya 2020. Today and tomorrow, we have the forum in online manner, so you won't be able to join us at this venue, but I hope you will be relaxed as you listen to and watch at the forum online. Thank you very much for waiting. We now begin session 2, Urban Strategy starting from Waterfront. Before we begin the session, I would like to introduce Professor Shinichiro Nakamura, Associate Professor, Nagoya University Graduate School, to explain the overview of the session.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, or good morning, good evening, wherever you are. And in this session, we will be looking at urban strategy starting from the waterfront. Many attractive cities in the world have attractive waterfronts, and we want to focus on the Nakagawa Canal and think about how we can utilize the canal. And here we will have a keynote speech from Rinio Brutto Messo from Italy, followed by examples here in Japan. The Fugan Canal in Japan, and we will have a presentation by Mr. Masaaki Hanyu, and the Nagoya urban development plan, as well as the current situation of the Nakagawa Canal, will be explained by Mr. Hideki Yamamoto of Nikken Sekkei. And these are the panelists. We will be having a panel discussion after each presentation. After all of the presentations, we would now like to move on to the keynote speech. Mr. Brutto Messo is an architect and urban designer in Venice, and he established an organization for collaboration between the city and canal authorities. He is assistant professor of the AIUV University of Venice, and he also has a lot of books concerning the relationship between cities and canal, and he is a key person in canal revitalization. Therefore, Mr. Brutto Messo, please, the floor is yours.
Così va bene? Mi sentite? Mi sentite adesso? Perfetto, posso iniziare. Allora, buongiorno a tutti.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. First of all, I would like to say hello to everyone from Venice and my hometown. And before I begin my presentation, I'd like to say thank you to the organizer. Thank you for organizing this interesting forum. It is unfortunate that I cannot join you at the physical venue today. And I would also like to express my gratitude to Professor Jinai, my longtime friend. He has been to many cities and canals around the world, and Venice is one of the study objects of Professor Jinai. And I'm not only saying thank you because of the out of formality, but because I have been working on the various aspects of cities where people live together with water for more than 30 years. But now that I have been invited to this forum, I was inspired to once again work on this important theme for the future of those cities. So I would like to make a presentation with the title, Recovering the Existing Canals to Improve the Quality of the Urban Environments and the Life of Inhabitants of Cities on Water. I have three parts to my presentation. First of all, as a general note, I will talk about city structure and organization. And an important role of water in improving daily life and urban environment. And next, I will briefly talk about successful cases of cities on water around the world. The canals have been appreciated as important asset and revived in these successful cases. In some cases, as a result, the canal became the symbol of the city, and then they were focused and gained attention internationally, and from economic, societal, and cultural perspectives, they were able to engender various benefits. So I will talk about these cases, and then in the end, I will come to a conclusion. When we look at the relationship between people and water in cities, in the last 40 to 50 years, a very important change occurred, which has been spreading rapidly worldwide. This global phenomena are emerging notably on two levels. First, as a change in the way cities are formed and developed, and second, as a fact that people are once again appreciating the quality of water and the presence of water in their daily lives. Looking at the first phenomenon, which is spreading around the world rapidly, the population is moving from inland area to the coastal area of the continent in a large scale. Now, the coastal area has only less than 60 kilometers, but a large portion of global population live on a coastal area. The population is concentrating in the coastal area. This trend can be seen around the world, and this trend does not appear to be stopping. And because of this, risks may be posed, and some risks are already posed. There are three reasons for that. First, because of the overpopulation in the coastal area, the quality of life in cities may be degraded. That is the first risk. And second is that these coastal areas and people living in coastal areas may face severe national phenomena such as inundations, flooding, and tsunami. And lastly, those inland vast lands that used to be used as farmlands are now depopulated and abandoned. Because of these phenomena, both human and material resources are lost. That is quite obvious. Regarding the second point, in the cities, people are taking process of rediscovery and reevaluation of presence of water in cities, and this phenomena were seen in wide areas, and it's an important phenomena, and it's continuing today. First, by reviving the waterfront, water has been rediscovered in cities, and also the waterborne transportation, particularly human transportation, were reproposed. And third, people are challenging to live on water, and this is related to the impact from climate change as well. And people are also giving attention to structures floating on water. And fourth is the revaluation and redevelopment of existing canals and cities, including those obsolete ones or those canals not in use. In many projects, as a prerequisite, they also worked on improving quality of water, and as a result, it has given great changes to city landscape as a city on water.
Now, when we talk about waterways, for the sake of comparison, we need to look at their nature, their origin, as well as their original function in order to distinguish between them. One is called channels, which means natural waterways. It has the function of connecting different bodies of water. The other one is canal. This is artificial waterway. So we need to distinguish between the two. Each one, or rather, the artificial canals, we need to understand that they were made for a wide range of uses and functions, which means defense and other functions were given to the canals. The relationship between the canals and cities, when we talk about this, especially for Venice and Amsterdam, these are representative examples, but the urban canals were elements that determined the structure and organization of the city. They were the one and only symbol or icons of the city. For example, in the ancient Aztec Empire's capital, Tenochtitlan, the city was built on a lagoon. It was built around numerous canals in an orderly manner. Bruges, Suzhou, Kurashiki in Japan are also other examples. These canal cities and their culture has flourished in many areas, and history tells us of how they flourished. Now, in history of civilization, people have made a lot of artificial canals in order to organize and preserve residential areas. However, after the 18th century Industrial Revolution, large-scale artificial canals, canal construction are seen around the world, and they have made large-scale success. In urban planning, the canal construction brought the waterfront to the city, and the image of the city has changed greatly because of the canals. New waterfronts were created, and that changed the cityscape. The street, plazas, and green belts were all fused together. So there was a time when artificial canals flourished, but then in mid-20th century, canals started to face a serious crisis. There are several different reasons because of this, but they were no longer being used as infrastructure, and they were left to deteriorate and became degraded, and then in the end they were abandoned. This era of degradation continued for several decades, but then in the latter half of the 20th century, a very interesting phenomenon started to happen. In many urban areas, the urban canals were rediscovered and were revived. The original functions were revived, and they were spotlighted because they, as a new waterway infrastructure, and totally new ways of usages were thought up, not just as waterways, but they gave value to the townscape, and also they became the symbol of the town. So they became emblems of communicating the new image of the city. In Seoul, the Cheonggi-cho Canal revitalization is one such example. Well then, how were the revitalization of urban canals realized? There are three major actions that were taken. The first one is to rediscover and revive the original usage and function of the canal. For transport, transportation may have been the original function. The second one is to look at the traditional usage and function of the canal and renew it and reform it. On the water, you might live there. Life on the waterfront may be another. The third one is creating and discovering new usage and functions of the canal. For example, along the canal, you might make a swimming pool, new ideas like this. However, in order to succeed in the revitalization, of course, it's not just the functional recovery that is necessary. The non-material value had played a very important role, for example, and that is about the cultural assets being rediscovered. And such a non-material value effectively promoted the recovery of the canal. It created another identity for the city. It is symbolic, or some hidden and lost cultural identities were rediscovered through the canal revitalization. And there are three phases in this reconstruction and revitalization. First one is to look at the tradition and urban history and relationship with water. And for this, we needed to have the involvement of universities and research institutes. The second one is dissemination and exchange of the research and survey results using IT and social network in order to disseminate the information. The third action would be establishing and promoting the values that were rediscovered, for example, through events, performances, and other religious events and festivities.
There are similar cases in Venice and also in Tokyo.
Non vedete le slide?
はい。
Oh, mamma mia. Beh, io ho parlato fino adesso e non avete visto le slide. Potevate dirmelo prima, caspita. Oh, Dio. Che rabbia. Dovevate dirmelo prima, che stupido.
ブルートベスさん、今お話しいただいただけでも十分伝わってきましたので、ここからぜひスライドを共有いただければと思います。
No, ma è fondamentale la presenza di slide, però se non fate, se non vedete,
通訳の方
io faccio la condivisione dello schermo.
The speaker is trying to share the screen.
Io chiedo scusa, ma pensavo di avere condiviso.
I apologize. I thought I was sharing my screen with everyone. Now, let me continue with my presentation.
もしよろしければ最初からざっと一回流していただいて、ここまで来ていただけるといいかと思います。
Sì, certo. E veramente chiedo scusa un'altra volta.
I apologize. This is the first one. My presentation is divided into three parts, and this is the global phenomena. And here I am showing you how population is concentrated in the coastal area. As you can see, the inland areas of continent are depopulated, especially the farmlands are being lost, and waterfront areas around the world, and tourism boats, and also the floating structures in water. And the natural channels and artificial canals are different, as I said. canals have different objectives. That is what I was talking about earlier. These are some photos of cities famous for their canals. The Aztec capital, and this is the photo of the time when canal was declining. At the time of Industrial Revolution, around 1920s, the canals were abandoned. Then in mid-20th century, one after another, rediscoveries were happening. So why are people rediscovering and revaluing canals? I said that there are many reasons behind that. Of course, they started resuming usage of canals, and people also rediscovered other ways to use canals. And they are intangible assets as well. The festivals and religious rituals, that's from Venice. So they are taking place as well. And then I will go back to my presentation. I apologize. I thought I was sharing my screen, but it wasn't shared with you. So these are some cases that I would like to introduce to you. You can see the locations: Italy, Birmingham, Utrecht, San Antonio, Birmingham in the UK, Tampere in Finland, Utrecht, and The Hague in the Netherlands. Regarding the cases that I am introducing, I'm going to look at them with you one by one. Rediscovery, revival, and appreciation of canals in cities were driven by some factors, and I analyzed those factors myself. So there are 10 factors. And I will introduce these cases, but I am not able to talk about the complex situations and backgrounds of these canals. However, by introducing these cases, I hope that I can shed light on various aspects of the issues related to redevelopment of canals in the cities, and I hope you will find something useful for future projects. First is recovery of aspects of urban identity and history of the city and its cultural link to water. And second is improvement of water management, collection, treatment, and disposal. And also water-related risk mitigation in relation to global climate change. I apologize, I'm hearing a noise.
Chiedo alle traduttrici se mi...
あり得るとしたら、あそこのマイクを回ってる。
Sì, sì, io la sento, però sento che prima c'era una... Posso continuare? Ok. Terzo punto, sistema di canali come...
The third is the canal system as a complementary or partially substitute element to the traditional land transport network. And fourth is the improvement of the quality of the environment in the areas along the canals. For example, improving the air quality and lowering the noise levels coming from urban traffic. And also, by allowing access to the shore of canals using public transportation, the public space in the cities can be expanded. such as creating pedestrian and cycling paths along the banks and the collective use of onboard spaces between land and the canal. The sixth element is creation on the water surfaces of space suitable for cultural activities and ceremonies such as movies and concerts. And seventh, the combination of water from the canals with the greenery of the adjacent areas can create a new innovative urban space which increases the environmental value of the canal areas. And eighth, the new urban landscape of the canals with the advantages of less traffic and better environmental quality creates the conditions for a strong tourist attraction. And also the canal can be used as a venue for water sports. And the last factor is that the creation of prestigious environments around the canals creates the conditions for an increase of real estate values both for resident and commercial activities. I will introduce some cases one by one. First, two towns with canals in Italy, Venice and Treviso. Venice is my hometown. They are both in the state of Veneto. This state has rivers, canals, lagoons, and the ocean. The land is blessed with water, and thanks to that, in cities and farmlands, the mass culture that is related to water has been cultivated. First, Venice. I don't think I need to tell you a lot about this city, so I would like to give you some numbers. Venice, the history city, is along the lagoon, and lagoon is in the ocean. Several tens of islands compose Venice, and there are 178 canals and 438 bridges. The historical center is relatively small, and the population is less than 50,000. The population actually was reduced by 15,000 since the end of World War II. In Venice, this red area, we have canals and we have streets in black that is called Cali, and they are spreading around the city. That is a uniqueness of Venice, and canals in Venice had been reclaimed in the last several centuries, but some were excavated and water was poured into some of the canals. As you can see, this was a former canal which was filled up, and then in 1997, this canal was reopened, and now we can find water in the canal. And here, this street that we can see used to be a canal, but the former canal had been reclaimed. In Veneto, there is another attractive city with a canal called Treviso. For several centuries, the administration and residents have protected this image that the city lives with the water of canal. There is no poor maintenance of the water or the canal, and people live along the waterfront. And the canal is contributing to the improvement of quality of city structure, and tourists also appreciate that. Let's look at Milan as well. The canal in Milan is called Navili. Leonardo da Vinci at the end of the 15th century also studied and came up with various ideas in order to go between a large lake and a town by boat. He also came up with ideas based on a modern idea, hydraulic engineering. This is the map by Leonardo da Vinci at the bottom. You can see the sketch by Leonardo da Vinci, and this is as of 19th century. There is a network of canals. In the center, you can see the area where we still have the canals with water, and red and brown areas are the former canals which are not in use anymore. And several decades ago, these canals were used, and you can see those in photos. Unfortunately, in the 20th century, as I said, most of the canals were filled up, and the remaining canals were also degrading as well. The system of the canals. Many of the canals were reclaimed. However, some of the areas became fashionable after redevelopment since latter half of 1990s because of the bottom-up approach and grassroots activities. Navili was to be revived, and in Expo in 2015 in Milan, it became a trigger to revive parts of remaining canals, and citizens also wanted to recover many of the canals, and they are petitioning that to the authorities. At night in summer, people are gathered in the area called Navili. And citizens' organizations are also taking various actions. Those waterways that have traditionally been used, connecting Switzerland to Venice and Milan, the waterway allows people to travel these places by boat, and people are trying to regain that benefit back. And also, large vessels are used for tourist attraction. Let's look at Birmingham now. Birmingham, along with Manchester, was a center of industrial revolution in the UK. Industrial revolution was progressed, and then the canal network was created to cover the urban centers then. At the peak, Birmingham Canal Network had the total length of 257 kilometers. This is a gas street basin. This basin is the center of the canal network, and it used to be one of the most important canal networks in the UK. The Birmingham city landscape in the 19th century had the canal network, which was the characteristic of this city, and you can see the photos. Along the canals, there were residential areas for factory workers, but buildings were cheap and they were not sanitary either. Most of the canals in cities were no longer used starting mid-20th century, and they were abandoned, as you can see in the photos. And as a result, the wide areas in the city were degraded. Since the mid-1980s, Birmingham City Council started to think that they needed to improve the image of Birmingham by enhancing the livableness. And the first target of the redevelopment was the center of the city, which was not developed after the end of World War II, including the canals. Birmingham was bombed in the World War II, so it was hard hit in the war, but immediately after the war was over, the city redevelopment project started. But the center of the city was not handled in the project. So the Birmingham City Council started working with a developer called Agent to redevelop the Gas Street Basin, including Mailbox and Brindley Place. They started this redevelopment project. The construction started in 1994 and ended in 2009. Currently, in Gas Street Basin, we can find bars and restaurants along the canal, and traditional narrow boats are going along the canal. The industrial legacy is modern, and industrial legacy is combined with the modern cosmopolitan landscape and providing a nice lifestyle. This is after the redevelopment project. And another one is Tampere. The town of Tampere is in Finland, but from the perspective of North Europe, Tampere was one of the areas central to First Industrial Revolution. In 1779, this city was officially established. And there are 2 lakes, and the roads were developed and paved along the river connecting the 2 lakes. So these 2 lakes have the difference in the height by 18 meters. That's why there's a rapid flow. But the length of the river is only 1 kilometer or less. Since the 15th century, for several centuries, this natural river had been developed into an artificial canal, Tamarkovsky Canal. A dam was established to adjust the flow of river. And then various factories enjoyed the supply of electricity from hydraulic power generation. And there are factories of Finlayson. The company is a cotton maker, and there's a factory of Tampella, the heavy industry machinery manufacturer, and Tako, the paper maker. And the chimneys of the factories became the symbol of rapid economic growth. And Tamarkovsky Canal became the center of largest manufacturing hub of the region. But after the beginning of 1980s, these factories were closed down one after another because industry faced the crisis. So the situation was struggling, but at the end of the 1990s, Tamarkovsky Canal redevelopment project started. And there were 3 pillars for this project. First was to leave the large structure of factories there and attract new industries such as IT and tech industry and service industry, including offices, cultural activities, and restaurants. There are many large structures in this area. This is a banknote of Finland, and you can see the factories that are printed in the design of Finnish banknote. Tamarkovsky Canal, the city landscape was valued, including the typical facade consisting of red brick buildings, and it was registered as a cultural heritage of Finland as well. The only factory that is still operating is the paper manufacturing factory of Tako. And the environment of the waterfront was also valued, and water quality was managed so that people can gather along the canal for commercial activities and leisure activities. So they are mindful of water quality management. The redevelopment projects along Tamakoski Canal became a great success for this city. Next example comes from Montreal. Montreal is the second largest city in Canada. St. Lawrence River is located there, and it was an important port city. St. Lawrence has a rapid flow, and for several centuries, the navigation safety issue was present. And then in 1825, the Lachine Canal was established. The total length is 15 kilometers, width is 6 meters. By using this canal, people can maneuver rapid flow. This canal connects the Lake St. Louis and former port of Montreal, and people can now safely go to the inland area. Many factories were located along the canals, and some of them were very large, and they became the symbol of economic power of the port and town of Montreal. However, the vessels became larger and larger, and also another waterway, St. Lawrence Seaway, replacing the canal, was opened in 1959. As a result, in mid-1950s, this area rapidly declined, and Lachine Canal was no longer serving function as an infrastructure, and some of the canal was reclaimed in 1970. However, starting around 2000, the interest in the canal flared up. This is important for the history of Canada. With that notion, it was registered as the Historic District of Canada in 1996. And since 2002, vessels for sporting purpose were allowed to navigate. And along with that, revaluation and reuse process of large aqueducts along the canal started. And currently, there are real estate businesses and projects ongoing, and service industry and service industry is attracted, and cultural activities are taking place. People are living there as well. The former industrial architecture is also remaining there. The abandoned landscape along the canal has changed significantly. There is a greenery area and a cycling road, and the environment along the canal and waterfront has been revived. Lachine Canal was reborn, and now the Lachine Canal is regaining its original function and role as a canal, and now ships can also go along the canal as well.
Now I'd like to move on to look at San Antonio. It's the 7th largest city in the United States. The San Antonio River that flows through the city, people had a very close relationship with the river. And this very wide green belt is one characteristic. In the center of the city, the river runs through, but you have this, it makes a big turn in the middle of the city. And around this area, you have shops and bars and restaurants. It creates a very lively and attractive place. However, in the past, for two times, the river overflowed in 1913, and then larger damage was caused in 1921 when the city was flooded. And the people in the city, as well as the administration, started to question about having a river meandering within the center of the city, and this great bend was changed into a drainage system. the water flow was closed in two places. These two places, and the river flow was straightened. In this part, was changed into a place with a drainage system, and concrete was used to harden and cover this bend part. However, a young architect, this photograph here, Robert Hugman, in 1929, came up with a counter proposal. He said that this bend part should be open with water, and around it, greenery should be established. He said that on both banks, a two-stage structure should be made, with the upper structure for vehicle roads and the lower stage along the river should be created into a promenade. And bars and restaurants could also be built in this area. Hugman came up with this new river walk plan, which included a 31-step bridge and other elements along the waterway. He has left behind many sketches. Bridges create these large arch shapes so that gondolas or floats that take part in the river parade every year could pass under the bridges. And Hugman emphasized the importance of the scenery along the river. And 11,000 trees lined the river, and he also instructed where they should be placed. And he presented this plan to the public, and many people agreed. And in 1938, this river walk plan was approved by the local government. A river network within and outside of the city was created in this plan. The outside waterway stretched over 24 kilometers, and the waterway within the city stretched over an 8-kilometer area. You can see in photographs and picture postcards of the time how high a quality this urban space had. The water flow was controlled through this drainage work, and so it was almost like a artificial canal, and around the water flow, very beautiful constructions were made, and it added new value to this waterway. The San Antonio River Walk was a great success because it had harmony with the cityscape, but also it was made not just for the residents, but also it attracted many visitors and tourists. Along the river, you have a parade every year. It became very famous. A platform would be placed on the water, and also along the banks, many events and attractions will happen. And now the administration is thinking of expanding this river walk water area. Lastly, I'd like to look at the Netherlands and how the Netherlands has always related with water. In many Netherlands cities, water systems were used as a defense from outside enemies. But because traffic congestions became an issue, for example, in Utrecht, this canal was filled up. Or rather, there was an idea to fill this up to resolve the traffic congestion issue. That was in 1968, and later on it was filled up to create a road. However, citizens criticized this plan, and therefore, once again, the canal is to be reopened. This is what it looks like today. Before and after the canal was filled up. And then in The Hague, a similar thing occurred, a similar we find something similar. The citizens raised their voices saying that they wanted to have their city with a canal back. And so these are photographs after the canal was reopened. Now I'd like to go on to my conclusion by making 4 recommendations. Some items that should be prioritized when you revalue and think about canals. Now, canals are artificial constructions. However, the natural element, water, is also a part of the canal. So when you make new developments, you need to consider the natural water as well as the artificial canal so that you can strike the appropriate balance between the two. Secondly, my recommendation is that you should not rely too much on technology, even if it's the latest technology, because it is not going to guarantee the success of the development of an urban canal. What is essential is that you need to always be aware of the characteristic of the water, which is a natural element. Thirdly, where possible and where beneficial, always go back to the original route and usage of the canal. Retrieving that even partially is very important, because you will be able to preserve the legacy, a historical legacy, but also you will be able to create the identity and preserve the identity of the city in a very creative way. My 4th suggestion: take a holistic view in looking at the problem solution and setting development goals, for example, flood risks, urban issues, natural preservation, or retaining the past usages, and also the activities that you want to carry out in the future. You need to consider all these different elements. By doing so, although I cannot guarantee, you will be able to retrieve the wonderful asset, which is the urban canal, and you will be able to go promote the process of a reevaluation. And thank you very much. I'm so very sorry that at the beginning I was not able to share with you the slides I have prepared.
Thank you very much, Rinyo-san. So you introduced cases to us from all over the world. And regarding Brutto Meso-san, based on his presentation, we'd like to talk about Japanese cases. In Toyama Prefecture, we have the Fugan Canal and the Kansui Park. And this will be presented to us by Hanyu-san. Hanyu-san is the Art House Oyabe art producer, and he worked with the Toyama city. And he was also in charge of civil engineering for a long number of years. He has been involved in the planning and project for the Fugan Canal. So Hanyu-san, please. Yes, thank you for your introduction. I used to work for Toyama Prefecture. My name is Hanyu. Now, can you see my slides? I'm trying to share my screen. Yes, we can see. Okay, in that case, I would like to talk about Toyama Prefecture's Fugan Canal and Kansui Park. And regarding this park, I have been involved for a long time. And today, when thinking back, this Fugan Canal and the revitalization and utilization project is discovery of local treasures and creation of its new value. The Fugan Canal's revitalization was moved forward, and the Kansui Park is now crowded with many people. It's become a very attractive waterside area. Now, back in the 1985, excuse me, so the Fugan Canal was no longer used, and the water was polluted. The water was dirty, and it was considered something unwelcome. And people talked about filling it in and turning it into a road as part of urban planning. And both the prefecture and the city had come up with such plans. However, looking at this Fugan Canal, people said, no, this should be utilized in town building. This is a treasure. There were people who looked at it that way. And this person, at the time, was in charge of urban planning at Toyama. And even today, his foresight is amazing. And this led to the Fugan Canal revitalization project. That was the starting point. And the Fugan Canal, from Toyama Station to Toyama Bay, it's about 5 kilometers. It's a canal. And in 1928, it started as an urban planning project, and in 1934, it was completed. It is a Toyama prefecture project. And it's not only the canal, but the river as well was filled in, the Jintsu River, and the city area was also smoothed out. So 3 projects ran together at the same time. And the landfill plan was suggested. So this is planned, and then the start of construction and completed, and it was used for 45 years. And then in 1979, there was a reclamation plan to fill it in. And like I just said, this canal revitalization plan, it started around 1984, and up until today, for 37 years, it's taken this long. A variety of plans have been drawn up, and we've been engaging in them. In 1983, around 1983, to the north of Toyama Station, let's create a new city base. So this was the urban future plan. So idle land to the north of the station was utilized to create a new business park. And this business park, inside it, a symbolic oasis, is the Kansui Park. And this is a little later after this, but the canals, the Fugan Canal, the most southernmost part, it's close to the station, is called the anchorage, Funadamari, and centered around this anchorage point, a city park would be prepared. But not only that, from the port all the way to the upstream of Jintsugawa River, over a wide area, there was a greening plan. And that is the Toyama 21st Century Water Park Jintsugawa Plan. So this is a very grand name for a grand project. And in this grand project, the central part was the Funadamari anchorage, and utilizing this for a park. And in the park, this was the urban planning part. On the other hand, the port. Turning to the port side, the Fugan Canal should be revitalized and renewed. So that was the new trend. And Port Renaissance 21. This plan was set up following the water park plan. And there were challenges and responses for the project. Broadly speaking, there were the local problems, and there were the administrative problems. The areas surrounding the canal, the residents, and the representatives of the residents, the members of parliament, there were many people against it. And the prefecture said it would fill it in, but then it changed its policy and people felt distrust. And another thing was the administrative problems. They came up with the water park plan, and that was part of the urban planning side. However, as a canal, the canal was owned and managed by the port. And from the port area, it would be excluded and switched to the urban planning part. Otherwise, it could not be turned into a park, which means that adjustment was necessary. So the state, prefecture, and city, the administration wanted to keep the water. and all parties agreed. There was some opposition, but gradually the plan moved forward. And as I just mentioned, there's the port part and the urban planning part. You had to draw the line. So that was the big administrative problem. And the port part was up to here. And here is the new urban planning part, the urban park part. So this was how the lines were drawn. So there's the harbor area and the city park area. And this shows you the park project. The area is 9.7 hectares. Overall, the costs came to around 12 billion yen. And overwhelmingly, it was the real estate, the surrounding land that had to be acquired. The center part was owned by the prefecture, but the surrounding land had to be acquired. And in total, it cost around 12 billion yen. In 1988, construction started, and in 2011, it was completed. And it was close to completion, and at that point in time, the park was created, but it wasn't used at all. So they wanted the park to be used more. So this was instructions from the governor, or homework from the governor. So there was plans to raise its value by improving the park use. And there were efforts to make it more festive, more widely used. So advertising about it, events, lifting restrictions, using private sector power, making attractive facilities. And also, we decided to operate ships. So spring, summer, autumn, winter, by season, there were a variety of events held. And through this, the Kansui Park, for the people of the prefecture, became more well known. And this shows you the boats. It's called the Fugan Overwater Line. And there were also canoe lessons. And Ai no Kaze is a group. And TV stations hosted marathons, and a newspaper company hosted a Hawaiian festival. So it's not just the city hall or the prefecture. It was the private sector that very constructively and aggressively took part in this. And while this happened, Starbucks Coffee decided to come to Toyama. And we thought, in Kansui Park, we wanted them to create this. And we talked with Starbucks, and as a result, things went very well. And in the park, that was planned, in the location that was planned, a perfect-sized, beautifully designed Starbucks came into being, and this was very, very popular. And we call this the most beautiful Starbucks in the world. And regarding running the ship service, it's become a very good service. Initially, in the year 2009, these small electric vehicles and solar vessels called Sora, and in 2015 and in 2017, new ships were added. And all of them are solar powered. Currently, there are 4 vessels. And about 50,000 people a year take rides on the boats. And creating attractive spots. We have been trying to add new charming spots. And at night, the night scenery. We've been doing a lot of lighting up and lighting events, preparing the facilities and holding such events. And also exchange between people and animals. We have a bird sanctuary in part of the park, and citizens can come and observe the birds from one of the huts. You can observe the winter birds. So this is a sanctuary, and in the back, there's the newly built Toyama Prefectural Museum. And in the year 2005, so the most successful tourist city by the seawater, San Antonio. We visited San Antonio, which is so famous and successful. And there, it's a wonderful place. And what's the secret? Why is it so attractive? We believe there are 7 key words, and we've summarized this. One is, there is an oasis landscape, and there are charming spots, and the buildings are beautiful, and the design control is done with very good quality. And as Herman-san brought globally famous restaurants to the waterfront and provided lots of things that people can enjoy. And there are riverboats, which are very popular, so you can enjoy the rides. And by the waterfront, there are outdoor theaters. Every night, you can enjoy shows. So these are events. Those are very important too. And these are together with the water. And they attract people towards the waterside together with the water. And another thing is there is careful maintenance. They are beautifully cleaned, and each and every one of them are meticulously maintained to welcome visitors. And you can visit them and have a really good time. And after you come home, in the case of Kansai Park, there's one more thing. You can come into contact with animals. I think that's a very important keyword. So there are these 7 keywords plus 1 for us, so there are 8 keywords. And the Kansai Park, we've won a lot of awards. So we do enjoy a very good reputation. And the Fugan Canal and Kansai Park, we've been involved in this for a long time. And this process, looking back, there are 4 stages in the development of Kansai Park. And after going through these stages, Kansai Park has gradually evolved. One is the stage of discovery and change. We talked about filling it in, and then we decided to keep it. So that was a big change. And next, one after another, there were lots of plans drawn up. So this is the stage of planning and construction. So park projects take a long time, and we've continued to stick at this. And once completed, or close to completion at that stage, we had to utilize it and evaluate it. That was the stage of park use and evaluation. And through use and evaluation, enhancing the value. And through evaluation and a good reputation, Starbucks actually, at an in-company global competition, it won the #1 prize in terms of melting in with the environment and getting along well with the environment. And I think that was very effective too. And recently, this is the stage of culture. So in the park, the number of people visiting the park has come to around 2 million people. So this is one of the top tourist spots in Toyama Prefecture. And in 2017, the prefectural museum was built in the park. So it has evolved into a cultural place. So this is like a urban oasis with a high degree of satisfaction, and it's become a very welcoming space. And it's not for me to say, but the festive or the crowds that we enjoy today. So the ability of realizing potential and the planning that indicates future destination, and for a long number of years, people have made efforts to make it better. And another thing is, and the governor, in a very powerful way, talked about how Kansai Park needs to be better known by the world. So there was intensive activities and investments. So focus and quick action. This was very effective. And there are still lots of issues remaining. There's the issue of garbage, and water plants are flourishing. There's dioxin. And there's the problem of car parks or parking lots. And another thing, this has been an issue from the past and will continue to be so in the future, design control. So facilities in the park and design control regarding the surrounding scenery is another outstanding issue. And the scenery is a resource. So we need to enhance how it looks, the view, and usage of the surrounding land. So right now, we cannot say it is a perfect landscape. So regarding land use in the surrounding area, changing it to make it an attractive place to stay. That's something we need to do. And another thing, the Fugan Canal, so the area surrounding the waterfront. And then there's the light rail, the Toyama light rail, which is running here, a railway system. So there's the city transportation axis and the port ram axis. And they're very close to each other. So we need to link them, strengthen the linkages, so that we have these two urban axes that we have. They need to be utilized further. No other city has this. And the Kansui Park is about 100 hectares. It's very compact. And we've been doing a lot of things regarding this. And the canal itself is 5 kilometers long. It's quite long. So this large waterfront exists. And the greening in the surrounding area is being done. And boats are using the canal. But this great, wonderful water space, we do not think we have been able to utilize it 100% yet. So going forward, there are still a lot of issues that we need to solve. That's all from myself. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Hanyu. I was able to understand that there were a range of issues, but Fugan Unga's regained popularity was very well explained in a very systematic manner. Thank you very much. Now, coming back to Nagoya, looking back at Nakagawa Canal, what should we do? It's been pointed out that situations around Nakagawa Canal has been stock taken, but Mr. Yamamoto will discuss the current situation of Nakagawa Canal. He's now the executive director of Nikken Design, and he graduated from Kyushu University Graduate School, and then he joined Nikken in 2002. And he worked on the projects of Midland Square and Tokyo Skytree. And since 2010, he has been transferred to Nagoya office, and he is now involved in a project of redevelopment of area surrounding Nagoya Station. Thank you very much for your kind introduction. I'm Yamamoto of Nikkei Engineering Design. What you see is the waterfront near Tokyo Skytree. And I've been briefly introduced by the moderator, and I look like this without a mask. Now, let's discuss a little about the Skytree. The 600-meter tall tower was the project, and before starting the construction, we did lots of research visiting many high towers, and this was the highest tower at that time. This is the tower in Macau, which is very elegant, and this is the one in Kobe. And this is something that Dr. Jinnai is most knowledgeable about. And these tower pictures have been drawn over and over since Edo period. They're using the same waterways, as was the case with Edo period. And this was a very famous picture. The Skytree was already included by the picture by Utagawa Kuniyoshi. And I didn't add the tower myself. And in Asakusa, there was the first ever tower with elevator in Japan that has 12 stories. So Tawas has a strong affinity with the waterfront. And Sky Tower is located in a downtown area where I wasn't quite sure if that can have a strong affinity between the downtown landscape and the state-of-the-art tower. This was the perspective as the time of the planning, seen from the Sumidagawa River. And when we looked at this picture, we were convinced that the project is to succeed. The tower is about half a kilometer away from the river, but it looks like this. And let's take a look at the overview of Nakagawa Canal. And some may have a repetitive lecturing, but please bear with me. Former Sasashima Station of Japan National Railway and Nagoya Port was connected with an artificial waterway, which is Nakagawa Canal, and that was fully completed in 1932. It was the canal of 8.2 kilometers long. Its width varies from 36 to 91 meters, and the depth is 3 meters. One of the characteristics of this canal is the locks at Nakagawa to maintain the level of the water. And this uses the same system as the canal. And this also has a tidal variations of the depth, and that was the Matsushige Lock. Panama, I'm sorry. And this is the sectional view of the canal, and that width can be varied between some 30 to 90 kilometers. And this was also the path of a small creek in the past. It was excavated, and the excavated earth was used for the reclamation of the land at the coastal side. And that was also a low-lying wetland that was reclaimed, and that will then lead to the creation of the land on which buildings and facilities can be built. And this is considered to be the facility for the port operations. So this was considered as part of the Nagoya port, and that has been administered and managed as the port facility. And because it is adjacent to the waterfront, it was within a part of Rinko region that can be dedicated and used for port-related facilities only. And after the completion of the canal, distribution and logistics have been facilitated with a very good connection with the cargo rail station. This has been widely used, and it's because it has been maintained with at the same level of height and depth that has greatly improved the capacity of traffic despite the tidal changes of the ocean. So thanks to the Nakagawa Canal, we have been able to establish the distribution system commensurate with the developing in manufacturing industries. And that was the reason that the region has been able to invite manufacturing industries. This also has served as the reservoir of rainwater, which can then be pumped out to the ocean. And this also has helped achieve the better water management and river management in Nagoya region. And 1960s was the area when the traffic on the canal was peaking. And as we talk today, the traffic has been down to 1% from its peak. And at the mouth of the river, the facility had been organized and developed, and it's now used for art events or for regatta sports event. So the mouth of the river is now being used for different purposes. Going forward, these are the list of expectations I have for the canal. Distribution or the logistic traffic has been declining, but because of the risk or the earthquake hazard, we really need to ensure the emergency logistic route at the time of an earthquake. And also, Nagoya is also the area that has a risk of internal flooding. And this reservoir function can be quite useful. Also, marine tourism, also the waterfront park facilities and environmental conservation can be achieved with a better use of this canal, because the canal is open to the south, open to the ocean to the south. This can be useful in terms of maintaining a good environment. This also has a potential to be used as sports and recreational facilities, and this also can be the center of culture, as was the case with canal art and other events. And these have been proposed by many over the years. And back in 2012, they have formulated a plan to reinvigorate Nakagawa Canal. Their mission is to connect the history all the way into the future. And it has a very smart tagline. And as you're aware, we have Vermicular Village and other facilities along the riverside, and we are making baby steps towards the completion of the project, and we'll be discussing whether this can be successfully completed. And before closing, I would like to go back to the Skytree. South of Skytree was a not so clean creek called Kita-Jukengawa River. As you can see, this is not really an approachable river, and when I first went there, it was stinky. But today, I'm not sure if you like artificial design or not, but just by the tower, there is such a recreational area where people can take a stroll, and this kind of facilities are being developed. And then, as has been the president of Linnai said, clean water is really the start of such a project, and that is with which I would like to close my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Yamamoto. Thank you for helping us catch up with the schedule. So right now, about Nakagawa Canal, there was an introduction of the current situation. And so we are short of time, but I do think we need a break. Let's take a 5-minute break. Currently, it is 2:38 Japan time, so let's start again from 2:43. Thank you very much.
はい、それでは、再開したいと思います。
Now we would like to resume the session. We are moving on to the panel discussion now, and we have Mr. Bruto Meso, the keynote speaker, and Mr. Hanyu, and also Mr. Yamamoto, who introduced Nakagawa Canal Initiative. And we also have FSG Landscape Architect Head and Associate Professor, Nagoya City University Graduate School, Dr. Akihiko Ono, and we have Professor Katsuyuki Takenaka from Aichi Prefecture University. And we have Vice Chair from Aichi Institute of Technology, Lecturer Nobuko Kawaguchi. So we heard the keynote speech and the two presentations. Mr. Bruto Meso, can you hear us? The interpreter is speaking to Mr. Bruto Meso, but we can't hear him. Then, Mr. Hanyu, can you hear us? I guess Hanyu-san is not with us either. Yes, I am here. Are we ready? Mr. Bruto Meso, can you hear us? Yes, I can. Thank you. So, Mr. Hanyu introduced the Fugan Canal, and Yamamoto-san introduced the Nakagawa Canal. So, do you have any comment on the two presentations?
Sì, ho trovato tutti e due i casi molto interessanti. In particolare mi ha molto colpito il caso di Toyama.
Left a strong impression is about the Fugan Canal in Toyama Prefecture. I've never been to Toyama before, unfortunately.
Mi sembra che è un caso di grande interesse, con una qualità del disegno.
I thought it was interesting. I am an architect and designer as well, so from the architectural design perspective, it's very interesting. The water management and technology, I'm not an expert in that, but in terms of the planning and goals and the outcomes and the architectural landscape, from these perspectives, it was an interesting case. Also, what is the aim? I talked about San Antonio, so it was very interesting to hear the observation on San Antonio case as well. San Antonio, the observation was very similar to what I thought as well. So I resonated with what Hanyu-san said. And from Nikken Sekkei, we heard about Tokyo Skytree. Tokyo is much larger than Toyama, and not only the scale, but I believe Tokyo has other issues and challenges as well. But in a megalo city of Tokyo, a great effort has been made for several decades, looking at the waterfront area and the people living there. And they have made effort to regain the canal and waterfront area. I know that much more has to be done, but as Professor Jinnai said, Tokyo can be once again made into a city of water. I think these efforts are being made, and I think it's wonderful. Thank you very much. So you said that the case was similar to the San Antonio case. So Hanyu-san, listening to Mr. Bruto Meso, do you have any response? Well, San Antonio, the effort required a lot of time, so they gradually made improvement up to today. As I said, in case of the park that we were working on, it took a lot of time, but the key point is to have both the software and hardware, or buildings and the people's power. And using both, we were able to make improvement. We didn't just build buildings. That would not be enough to attract people. We made some mechanism to attract people, and Starbucks was one tool, and that brought people to the area. And then another restaurant and museum were built up. So that's how we gradually made enhancement. I think that's a characteristic, unique characteristic of our case. Yes, it takes a lot of time. I think we can say the same for all the cases. Fugan Canal, it took a lot of time to work on that. And Nakagawa Canal in Nagoya City, the restoration and the revival effort just started. So Yamamoto-san, what do you think? What will be the key in making progress on these projects? Apologize. In the city of Nagoya, Nakagawa Canal, what do we expect from Nakagawa Canal? We need to have a broad consensus. It's not just for the administrative purpose, so we need to have the perspectives of the citizens as well. And one example I can talk about is I talked about the wind path that people don't really talk about. In case of Nagoya City, fortunately, we have the wind or breeze coming from the ocean and breeze going through the land as well. We have to have that common understanding in creating a vision. So you talked about common value. That hasn't been understood well, but then this path of wind is a new way to rediscover the area. So we have some panelists who haven't spoken up yet. So first, Kawaguchi-san, as a way to introduce yourself, I'd like you to use some slides to introduce some cases. So Kawaguchi-san, can you start? You can share your screen. Kawaguchi-san is wearing a t-shirt. Can you see what it says? It says that there's no life without SAP. Do you know SAP? Well, Kawaguchi-san is a sapper. I think that she is the one, and also Hideshima-san, the programmer, who are looking at Nagoya from the waterfront. So if you can introduce your slide to talk about the Nagoya city from the perspective of waterfront. Good afternoon. I'm Kawaguchi from IT Institute of Technology. I'm going to talk about value and attractiveness of Nakagawa Canal and Nagoya City. As introduced, this is the picture, and you can see how SAP is done. You are on board, and then you are on water. So my specialty is in urban planning and greenery planning. And I've been engaged in researches from the utilization and management perspective. And also from the perspective of city building, I have been engaged in activity to promote the relationship between the waterfront and people. And Nagoya SAP Promotion Council is an organization which I belong to. And the main objective is to promote the utilization of waterfront in a safe manner in Nagoya and the surrounding area. So using SAP, we first go to the waterfront.
And we have visited areas around Nagoya. As for canals, we have Horikawa and Shonai River, Kiso River. So we visited all kinds of waterways. And one activity that we have is how can we live a life which makes us closer to the water? We have this Nagoya morning SUP activities. So every morning, well, not every morning, but on weekdays or before going to work, we just go down to the water to get some exercise and then go to work. We have started this activity and we have doing this in the past several years. And after we started, we understood that it's important that there is a way to get down onto the water, especially if it's the morning. As we live in the cities, it has to be close to our homes, and it has to have good access to train stations, bus stops. And there are other people using the water, people who go fishing, people on boats. And so we have to maintain a certain physical distance between these people. So we need toilet facilities or areas to wash our boards right near the entranceway into the water. And the bottom pictures comes from Horikawa, Meijo Park. We enter the water from Meijo Park. So those are the conditions. And if you look at the this picture, it's when we went for a cleaning activity. So after cleaning, we need places where we can wash our boards and also change our clothing. And I do understand I don't have much time, but I'd like to show you several other pictures of the morning along Horikawa. This is Meijo Park. There's a slope, so you can get to the water very easily, and you go down south from there. And there are areas where you can see the Nagoya Castle. There are some interesting spots. You can look up at the city from under the bridges. So nature, as well as these artificial buildings, can be seen all together. And it's very close to where people live, and that gives us joy as we enjoy SUP. And this is close to our homes, and it makes us feel as if this is our new daily routine. So this is part of our daily life now, and we are seeking new encounters with nature, and we want to have nature as well as buildings very close to us. We want to relax on the waters. It's very difficult to have time to relax nowadays, to take a deep breath, but you can do that during SUP activities, and you have a lot of encounter with many people. Some people will wave from their windows as we pass, and this gives us a very comfortable distance with these people. And there are a lot of other activities, but we haven't been able to do much. We have started some events using the paddle boards, and it is a port area, therefore we need to get approval, and we need to adjust how we use the water surface with other users. Right now we can't just go in freely, but through these events, we are hoping that many other people can get involved. And we have an event right now for first-time paddlers. This is not an actual photograph. We created this, but the event had to be postponed this time. But we are hoping that we can have this SUP activity for first-time experiencers, and we can just casually walk up to the waterfront. So this is different from looking down upon the water from a distance. You can really get close to the water, and that is very attractive. And you have a lot of nature around the waterway. And you can also see a lot of people working in the industry all around as well. And feeling that their presence close is also another attractiveness. And lastly, the Nakagawa Canal is a large construction, and having such a large water surface right in the city is very rare. SUP is a water sports activity. There are many events, not just here in Japan, but overseas. We can utilize this as a tourist attraction or tourism asset. And I believe that may lead to enhancing the value of the city itself. Thank you very much, Kawaguchi-san. So looking up from the water, you might find a lot of nature in the city. You might see different walks of people from different walks of life. So next, I'd like to move on to Takenaka-san. Geography, and you have been studying the Nakagawa Canal for a very long time. So Professor Takenaka, please. Yes, I am Takenaka. Thank you very much. I am from Aichi Prefectural University. Geology is my field. It's like it's somewhere in between science and philosophy. And from my side, by using some material, I would like to speak briefly.
Sì, vi sento. Spengo solo l'audio per non disturbare.
I'm very sorry, the personal computer is moving very, very slowly. Should I? Yes, I'm just, I've succeeded in sharing my slide now. So space code research is what I've been doing, especially around the Nakagawa Canal. And the spatial code may be difficult to understand. I am often told that. But briefly, it is looking at how space is being used by people, how the space is related to people, and looking at the past up until now to understand the value of that place or site. What comes in, Professor Kwako, as well as a group in the Netherlands, have a study on landscape biographies. So Nakagawa Canal, if you look at the relationship from the past, what are the characteristics that we can see?
That is what I'm going to talk about. You can see A, B, and C. A is about water, soil, and sea area and land area. And Nakagawa Canal is a waterway, so we tend to look at the water, and that is actually important. But in order to improve the value of land usage, we have to look at both sea area and land area. And canal is an artificial structure connecting the two. So we have that is a very important perspective when it comes to a canal, and the scale is very large. And the key term is that the city is going toward the ocean. This slide shows the layers of cities going toward the sea. A German person, a communication designer, drew this illustration. From Atsuta area to Nagoya City, there are different layers, and Nakagawa Canal is connecting all these areas. But Nakagawa Canal is not in the dense cities, but so it's different from other canals in Edo. The canal is going through the farmland or the settlement that was cultivated. But then in pre-modern era, these areas became industrialized, and then residential areas were created and commercial area was developed. So from the rice paddy areas to the suburban area, these areas were shifted, and that's where the Nakagawa Canal is going through. And when we think about future possibilities and potentials, that is an important factor. And artificial natural embankment means that when the canal is cultivated, the land value was increased on both sides of the canal by making the embankment. That is very epoch-making. And the second, B, is about experience of the space of elongated port. If you want to understand the interesting aspect of Nakagawa Canal, you have to approach the canal and you have to move along the canal. And the best way is to use a boat or a vessel. So from the land perspective, this is a warehouse. We are looking at the warehouse from the road, and on the road side and on the canal side, there are both entrances, and then across the canal, there are different warehouses. So this is how people worked. And we can say that this city is two-sided in a way. So it's not just about the physical space, but these physical spaces are embedded in us in a way of history or memory. That is also a very important point. And the aesthetics of the continuity. The Venturi, the architect, went to Las Vegas in the US. He said that this area is a boatscape. On both sides of the canal, there are landscapes unfolding, and the only way to experience that landscape is to go on a boat and go along the water. So in a way, in Nakagawa Canal, we can do that, and it's unique. And C is about people. Who are the players in Nakagawa Canal? It's another important aspect. So the canal is a large vessel of Nagoya. We have craftsmen and we have businessmen who have close relationships. So it's a very busy city.
And it's still so today. And I believe it captures that aspect, especially. And if you can wait for the screen to appear. I'm very sorry. My computer is moving so slowly, but on the right-hand side over here, this is some of the businesses that you would find along the Nakagawa Canal. There are many, and the number is decreasing nowadays, but these people have been competing with each other. But also, they created their workplaces to create the characteristics of working along the canal, and I believe that is one important aspect. And I will end my presentation soon, but sorry, my computer again. But some of the things I talked about. So looking at the Nakagawa Canal from the spatial cold perspective in order to co-create the area. This is a book that came out a while ago. We have 12 codes to analyze the canal. It's not just analyzing the canal, but also the identified value. How do we utilize that and apply that? We also provide some suggestions. For example, the Nakagawa Canal competition and other specific examples are given so that we can consider and discuss together with readers. And if there are people listening from abroad, including Mr. Brutto Messo, if you look at the link at the right-hand bottom, the essence of this research is provided in English, so I do hope that you can look at this at your when you have time. Thank you. Thank you very much, Professor Takenaka. I believe you have given us many key words, and we would like to come back to that later on in our discussions. Now, Ono-san is a landscape architect, and from the perspective of design, if you can introduce yourself and also give us a short presentation. Thank you very much. I am from Nagoya City University. My name is Akihiko Ono, and I would like to briefly explain a little bit about landscape design and also from the architectural perspective, a look at the Nakagawa Canal and other aspects. Very briefly, I am here at Nagoya City University now, and I also have an architectural office. I have been to the Netherlands, and I went to Utrecht, which appeared in Dr. Brutto Messo's presentation.
And normally, we talk about gardens and water. In Aichi, Tokyo, Gunma, I've been engaged in research and in design. I have been involved in the public sector, private sector as well. And to go back to the main theme briefly, so how do we design? And how do we finish this into spaces? I would like to suggest this theme. In the past, already, a lot has been said. So briefly, I would like to go through my presentation. So the Nakagawa Canal, what issues should it tackle? And Brutto Messo-san already talked about this, and we have heard from others. To start out with, the Nakagawa Canal was an industrial infrastructure, and then this declined, and it became empty, and it lost its purpose or its usage. And we had to discover a new way to use it and create a new way to use it. And I think Dr. Brutto Messo talked about this. And earlier on, we also heard about house up and boats and things like that, and cafes. So new ways to use the canal will probably continue to be discovered. So from the perspective of spatial design, what kind of steps are possible? Earlier on, as Takenaka-san mentioned, first, we have to find a viewpoint. That's important. On the Nakagawa Canal, the canal already has a lot of attractive points. From that perspective, which viewpoints are important? We need to try to discover them or create them. I think that is important. And this is something that's already moving forward. As Professor Takenaka said earlier on, you have to walk through it. So that's the kind of landscape that it is. On the promenade, or maybe on a boat. By making it possible to go through the canal, you can experience the scenery flowing by. I think it's very important to experience that. And lastly, and the third, this is very important, in this situation, how can we take something that was industrial before, built at a very large scale, and create a place for people to be? How can you create a lot of contact points with the people? So before, this is a space only for industrial use. But now, we need to add new activities. And in that respect, this is a very important theme. So regarding creating spaces for people, what kind of designs are necessary? The whole length is about 8 kilometers. And it's very long when considered from a daily lifestyle point of view. And that being the case, this kind of space, it should be divided into smaller bits. So regarding viewpoints, there are a variety of viewpoints. And you need to try to cut it up so that you can separate it out and divide the spaces. And this is going to create the opportunity for people to use these spaces. And if you have such opportunities, people will be able to come here. And already, cafes like this are being built. So in creating places like this, so when we have a promenade or a sidewalk, it shouldn't just be the same kind of sidewalk. Some of it should be separated out, and we should have squares, terraces. And by doing this, this can be a viewpoint, or it can be a place to stay, or a place to eat or drink. This may be something that's only natural, but I also think it's very important. And as part of this, and this is an overseas case, like this, there's a terrace that sticks out or extrudes onto the water. This is the kind of thing I'm talking about. For example, other than that, you can have, so it's like a band-shaped long 8-kilometer area. So as a place for people to gather and stay, subtle designs can have a big impact on the activities of people. This is the case of Shibuya-gawa River, so having handrails like this. What should we do? Or the way you pave the ground? A small difference is going to create a space like this. So it shouldn't just be a path, an industrial area where people pass through. It should be a place where people can linger and stay. In that respect, it's very long and thin. It's like a path, or it's a very long infrastructure, but we should think about it differently. We should think about it as spaces where people can stay. So the long path should be separated out into small plazas. And by plaza, you should create a different identity, which is going to become a contact point with the local people, or become a place for the people to come and spend time. And as part of this, each of these spaces, how can you have this melt into the lives of the people? That's another thing that's important. And by separating out each of these spaces one by one, each of them is going to start to have a different color. And this, actually, when you look at this carefully, Already at the Nakagawa Canal, there are very unique, distinct warehouses. There are plants, shrubs, and that's part of its identity. And for example, this is an example from Tokyo. There's furniture like this. Or there are places for people to play. Or there are lock-ins, or at night, there's lighting like this. So it's like a place where light gathers. Or in terms of consideration for the environment, the rain that comes falling down can evaporate and return to the river. And regarding the plants, we shouldn't just buy something from the plant shop and plant it. This is what we do at our research area. We buy the seeds and we do it together with the children and make them sprout. So this is one of the ways of creating these spaces I was talking about. And as the viewpoint, I've tried to summarize this. This is what I'm trying to do as my final part of my presentation from the planning viewpoint. We need to create a lot of viewpoints. How do we do that? And how do we create the areas that people walk through? And how do we create living spaces or places where people linger? And in creating these places where people can stay, it's a very large space. So how can you separate it out, divide it, and create contact between people and the spaces, or get the people to feel that they can use these spaces, make it a more common space? That's very important. And that is going to be one of the viewpoints for the discussion. And with that, I would like to end my presentation.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ono. From a design perspective, or land use or landscaping perspective, they have provided a very good view of the options. Sectionalization or division were something that has been touched upon. Combined with what has been said by Mr. Yamamoto, and judging it against the history of Nakagawa Canal, I had an opportunity to look at the draft of the Nakagawa Canal plan. Originally, it was planned as something that was divided, totally divided from the living space of life in Nagoya. So Nakagawa Canal was really for the industrial activities, not necessarily for people's lives. And that has been evident all the way from the point of formulation of the plan. Sectionalization or dividing the belt of Nakagawa Canal may also be difficult, especially against this backdrop. And it's been pointed out that this also should be seen from the viewpoint of people's everyday life. And would you like to add some points, Professor Takenaka? Excuse me, Mr. Yam. I have 2 more slides. Maybe I should be showing them. And I think that my PC is faster because I have closed all the other apps that I'm not using. Can you see the slides? Thinking about the future of the spaces or spatial use, the basics is the unit of scales, if you will, or the scope within which those scales are measured or planned. And what really is the scope of the plan? From local to global, what kind of relations within which that facility should be pursuing its values? Suppose that it was a small city park being renovated at the center of a city, or if it is a reservoir that is everywhere and the eastern part of Japan, if these are being renovated, then each and every one of these plans or project should be treated as a local plan with local needs. But in case of Nakagawa Canal, especially because it is 8 kilometers long, it has its physical size. But at the same time, Nakagawa Canal is also connected to the world because it is pouring out into the sea. So the other end of the canal is the world. So local renovation should not be the scope within which this project is drafted. So suppose that there are 3 levels of global, national, and local. But going back to the previous discussion, conceptually, issues and challenges is usually categorized into different levels of global, national, and local. However, we are in a flux in terms of the relationships. So for spaces with global potentials, that project should be able to span all the 3 levels of project planning from local to global, especially because it has its connection to the world, and water and land or soil, or Nagoya's major structure or major facility that connects the land and the water body, and that has been supporting the backbone of Nagoya economy. And those hardworking nature of Nagoya's people can also be the characteristics that you can find in terms of the connotation of Nakagawa Canal. If you look at it within a national perspective, in terms of the development or in terms of the project, well, that can possibly be an option. Say, for example, linear Shinkansen will connect Nagoya and Tokyo, and that could possibly expand the potentials of Nakagawa Canal. And within a national economic spheres, these artificial structures or the activities within that facilities can possibly be impacted. And that is another discussion, but we have to be careful. They're talking of the linear Shinkansen. It will make the trip shorter. People will be able to travel from Nagoya to Tokyo in 40 minutes, and that can be a useful addition to the current option. But Nagoya shouldn't be considered as a satellite city of Tokyo. And if it is a satellite city, and then everything must probably have to go through via Tokyo. But that will then make the facility or the potentials of Nakagawa Canal less global. So local connection to the global opportunities is present in case of the project of Nakagawa Canal. And that really needs to be ensured formulating the plan. And these are not really an exclusive choice. People living near the canal, their quality of life can also be improved through this project. So in that sense, it can be a local project, but be it in the areas of business or culture, formation of a global network can really benefit from by having Nakagawa Canal as a hub.
So what's the position of a canal? When you look at this from a broad perspective, what is its position when you think about that? In Nagoya, It used to be the #1 city in Japan regarding manufacturing, but it's not that flamboyant. It's not that gorgeous. It's pretty quiet. And Nagoya has been supporting state-of-the-art industries. And the port of Nagoya is the #1 port in Japan, at least as a commercial port. It's #1, and this port, legally, is part of the Port Authority. And it's linked to the central metropolitan area. Therefore, this infrastructure has potential, and to draw that potential out, the methodology, as I mentioned earlier on, there are the 3 levels. How do you link those 3 levels? That's something we should think about. And this is for people working there, for people living there. This will be rebuilding their lifestyles. Or what kind of businesses should be created and nurtured? So formation of industries, it's that kind of issue as well. And the image of the city, how do you transmit that? Or related to business, how should this location be a place where people can have a sense of purpose and have exchange here? It's also that kind of issue. And this is my final slide, and I will not go into detail. But personally, too, earlier on, I introduced the spatial structures research, and there is the Urban Communication Research Institute. I started this institute up, and the Nakagawa Canal, the people involved, I have been trying to dig them out. And together with these businesses, artists, and with local governments, researchers, their perspectives are being incorporated. And at a variety of levels, how do we link the scale? In the past, we've had 6 or so open discussions with the Nakagawa Canal as the theme. And going forward, as much as I can, I would like to continue these efforts. And regarding these discussions, if you have any requests regarding themes you would like us to discuss, I am not a consultant, I'm a researcher. And as a researcher, how should I put this? I would like to utilize the characteristics that I have to try to contribute to the discussion. And I'd like to try to be creative regarding this. So if you are interested, then please think about this and get in touch. And there's the Research Institute for Urban Communications website, and there's some information there. If you could please take a look. That's all from myself. Thank you. Yes, Professor Takenaka, thank you very much. This was a very important hint that you gave us, I feel. And the Nakagawa Canal, to start out with, when you think about it, it used to be part of the sea. And now the port of Nagoya is linked to the world. It's a big distribution center, and there's Saint-Clair, the airport, as well. And of course, once the linear Shinkansen is in place, there's going to be an economic zone linked with Tokyo, and on the other hand, from Nagoya, we can be linked directly to the world, and the Nakagawa Canal can play a big role. And when that happens, the 3, from local to global, regarding the 3 different scales, in what way can we link these 3? And as a space, how can we link them with the Nakagawa Canal? So this is a big and also difficult issue. And regarding this, from here, if you would like to make a comment, we'd like you to chip in. So maybe Yamamoto-san, urban planning. So this is you're involved in very large-scale projects as well. So Yamamoto-san, would you like to comment? Yes, thank you for calling on me. While I am talking, please think about what you are going to say, the other panelists. Now, what Professor Takenaka was saying, it was very interesting, and I was very interested. So this is an age of IT, the internet, and more than ever before, there is an unlimited number of places where you can be linked to the rest of the world. And including distribution, there's a port, and also airport, harbor. Nakagawa Canal is connected. And together with the people of Nagoya, I would like to think about this. And in the past, urban planning of the past. So part of what I do, sometimes it's very difficult, but the approach is quite different. And Dr. Brutto Messo talked about new value. So there's the basic function, and then you need to raise it higher from there. That's the approach. So there's the potential for linkages. And then what are the next new values going to be? And in the Nakagawa Canal Revitalization Plan, there was the manufacturing zone. That was a part of the plan. And yesterday, in one of the presentations, they said, there's no answer yet. I remember they were saying that. So what are we going to have here? Maybe that's the issue. And earlier on, Professor Takenaka and I talked about this. So there's the big, heavy, smelly, noisy industries. And trying to bring them back along the Nakagawa Canal is not really realistic because people live there now. But based on that kind of thing, maybe something new is possible. Very often I say, how is the city of Nagoya going to change? Are there any good examples? People ask me, and I talk about Seattle. So there are the existing base industries, and Boeing went to Chicago, and then the other people came up with a new IT, and they set up Amazon, Costco in Seattle. So this led to the next stage. So this exists. This happened because industry used to exist there before. I read about that a lot. And Nakagawa Canal, this area, if it's going to be similar, then something, one step, two steps higher. I think we need to try to enhance it. If we can do that, then that is going to link us to the rest of the world and make us global. And I would like to discuss this with everyone to try to move this forward. But as the entrance, this was a very stimulating thing. Thank you very much. Maybe that doesn't answer your question. No, thank you very much. And Ono-san, I think you were nodding just now, listening to Professor Takenaka. So Ono-san, what do you think? Yes. So what I have to say, so creating places where people feel a sense of belonging. I talked about it from that perspective, but on the other hand, all of the spaces, should they be places for people to be? I don't think so. And if you do that, then the characteristics of the Nakagawa Canal are not going to be fully utilized. And we've been talking about Dr. Brutto Messo's presentation. So there was potential already, or there's the past history that already exists. And based on this, this place now exists today. So therefore, both need to exist together, side by side. We need to find a way to do that. And in principle, with spatial design, you can resolve this. Part of this can be resolved. And then with the Fugan Canal, it's not just the hardware. The hardware and the software need to work together. And that, for today, has led to the success of the Nakagawa Canal.
So you really have to test and try combining hardware and software and connecting to the world locally and globally. And that is something that we should be trying. And that was why I was nodding hard, listening to the presentation. Are there any other comments? Or are there anyone who would like to make any additional comments? You can freely raise your hand. Okay, Dr. Bruttometto. You mentioned I share the view with everyone. In case of Nakagawa Canal, of course, there are certain differences between other projects and Nakagawa Canal. There are commonalities or similarities as well, while there are differences. Nakagawa started as industrial canal, clearly targeting industrial use at the time of its establishment. It had a clear industrial mission when it was created, but in other cities or in other countries, many of the canals in other places also did have clear mission. But at one point or another, their missions were reinvented. Its basic function as an asset will be maintained, but they were given a second chance for the reinvention of its mission.
Degli obiettivi generali, di un ridisegno di qualche cosa che esiste già.
First, the purpose needs to be shared in redesigning the hardware. There still is a hardware, and that hardware was created based on the initial mission, but it is now going to the next phase, which demands reviewing of that mission. Economically, how would you make this facility make ends meet, or how to bring people into the area? What we have to focus is to clarify what we want to achieve and how you wish to change this infrastructure. This physical existence already has a strong characteristics, which may rather be rigidly defined. This robust hardware have a range of different potentialities, and that is fortunate. So perhaps we may want to have additional physical alteration, or maybe you can even think about changing the route of the water. This kind of physical addition can possibly be an option, or the waterway usage can be expanded at the waterfront, or the area behind the former factory areas also do have other potentials. All these factors need to be comprehensively reviewed. So first, you have to clarify what you want to do with what you have. And you really then have to get to a consensus. Social consensus and sharing of an idea is key. Politicians also need to be aware of that. Citizens' consensus is very important, and without that, the project cannot successfully proceed. It may also take lots of time without a consensus on the part of the citizen. So this is true for other cities as well. You have to listen to the opinions of the citizens and civil society organizations. They are active users of this canal already. And spontaneous use of this facility needs to be factored into reviewing or reformulating the plan. So you first have to get all those ideas, and you have to hammer out a plan, try to win an understanding from the citizen. You also have to go on to the fundraising phase. This is a fortunate and major opportunity, especially about Nakagawa Canal. As mentioned already, interdisciplinary opinions and outputs also needs to be recapped and synthesized. In the final analysis, you have to come up with one body of ideas via exchanging views among all the stakeholders. So towards revitalization, Dr. Bruto Messo have presented a path. So listen to people's opinions. Was the comment that has been made yesterday? Big U project presented yesterday also emphasized the importance of listening to the users and citizens. And that is the process that is imperative for the Nakagawa Canal project. Comprehensive understanding of the situation is very important. If you focus on the functions, then you would end up adding additional functions, but rather you should be thinking about all those comprehensive understanding of the situation in which Nakagawa Canal is now placed in. Linking it globally demands a catalyst, where art can play a significant role. And that also needs to be considered. And without art, this project cannot succeed. And that also go back to the art activities by the citizens. And sorry about my poor time management, but I would now like to listen to the brief final comments by each participant before closing the session.
Thank you. Today, so we talked about global issues and also all the way to the Nakagawa Canal's issues. And yesterday too, I was listening in and I was able to absorb a diverse discussion. And in particular, what kind of viewpoint and what's the purpose when you want to build, when you want to change? I think you need that kind of viewpoint. From Dr. Brutto-Messo, Mr. Brutto-Messo's presentation, that was what he said, and I agree. A clear sense of purpose, a clear goal is necessary, and you need to execute it. You need to take action. I think that is very important. And having these serious discussions is also very important. Thank you. Yamamoto-san, please go ahead. Yes, thank you, everyone. And I have a very basic kind of thing to talk about. So today there was a lot of very valuable discussions, viewpoints, but the awareness of the ordinary people is actually very low. I don't think they've been able to keep up. Now everyone gathered here today, people listening in today, they understand, and they understand the potential as well. That's why they are listening in. So you already have a very high level of awareness, but the others, or maybe people who actually live there, regarding the next set of values, I don't think they recognize them. Therefore, these kinds of activities and canal art, in a variety of ways, we are aiming for grassroots kind of activities. And there's a lot of potential with Nakagawa Canal, and I hope that we can enhance it. Thank you very much for today. Please go ahead. Yes, what Yamamoto-san said, that's exactly what I was thinking. In that respect, going forward, there are going to be a lot of small or trivial, small changes, small moves. So how do we communicate about them? And how do we create new value and new spaces together with everyone? I think that's important. And this is, in the end, so on a daily basis, for people who are living there, watching there, this is going to, can they see new value there? And they should be able to see that in the spatial design. And on the other hand, they should be able to see the value in a variety of activities. So we need to think about this as we hold discussions like this and make sure this leads to the next step. Thank you. Thank you.
There are many other things that we need to discuss, and I look forward to having many more rounds of discussions. Professor Nakamura touched upon the issues that are very important. And if I may, Nakagawa Canal, I believe it was Professor Brutto-Messo's cases in Europe and in the US. But compared to these projects, Nakagawa is located in a less dense city populated situation, and the buildings around it, in terms of historic value as historical buildings, I think that those historical values are rather limited as far as Nakagawa is concerned. So landscaping design for Nakagawa can be quite liberal in view of the fact that they are not highly densely populated in terms of people and historical assets. Multifunctional park space can be the base of the facility on which industrial or cultural facilities can be built. That's one of the things that we can possibly do. But functional conversion may be important. Creativity is needed. And from local to global, all the different 3 levels can be concurrently achieved, I mentioned. But seen as a local space, it can be used as the venue for sports activities with clear purpose, that can meet the needs of the people. And the facility is already used as sports venues. Global connection or communication may mean that multifunctional facility can thrive locally and globally at the same time. And industries of state-of-the-art technologies can also be the area that can possibly thrive. And you have to blend all these different elements. And this is really my personal aspiration, if you will. But within a urban setting in Japan, tradition is one element. It's different from the European cities. But like the ground of a shrine, a place or plaza can be versatile in its usage. And the same is true for Nakagawa Canal as well. That can possibly lead to the improvement of QOL of the people. That will also help connect Nakagawa to the world as well, at the same time serving local needs. Thank you. Yeah, it can possibly be another fresh topic for us to start all over, but we have run out of time. And Mr. Hanyu and Professor Bruttometto, please try to be succinct because we have run over the assigned time.
So the part that we are in charge of, we should make that part better, which means that will improve the area around us. In the case of Kansui Park, around us there are private sector restaurants that are starting to crop up. So we need to look forward to this halo effect to the area around. And that's something we need to do. And also, we need to improve the contents and then communicate. NHK's Toyama Broadcasting Station on the news at 6 p.m. So they always use Kansui Park in the back when they do the news, and I think that's been very impactful. Thank you. Thank you. And lastly, Professor Bruttometto, thank you for joining us from so early in the morning. Could we have a few closing words, please? Yes. First, I apologize that I overran my time. First, I forgot to share my slides. Sorry about that. For me, what was truly interesting, this was a very interesting experience. So Nakagawa Canal, regarding this Nakagawa case, this was a wonderful opportunity to learn about this. And if I were to give a piece of advice, these 2 days, the achievements or the results should be reflected in the revitalization of Nakagawa Canal. Today, what was discussed today should be turned into specific actions. I think this is a very good opportunity. This is a very important piece of infrastructure. And for the city, this is an important core area. Many citizens, regarding its importance, are not yet aware of the importance you were saying. And this is not really an infrastructure. I think it has bigger significance than just a piece of infrastructure. More people need to know about this. So the results of our two-day discussions regarding what we have discussed, this should be summarized. And we need to take one more step forward. Nagoya City, the authorities, I think we need to make proposals to the authorities. And another thing that is important is, at the risk of being repetitive, the people, the citizens, we need to get them also to realize and widely recognize this. They are involved firsthand, and they are the main players in this process. So yes, we do need to raise the awareness among the people. Thank you very much for inviting me today.
それではこちらの第2セッション、終わりたいと思います。ご参加いた
With
だき
this, we would now like to conclude the second session. Thank you.